Welcome to episode 53 of Gods and Heroes of Ancient Greece. My name is MyLinda, Butterworth, and today we continue with the Seven Against Thebes, with the story of Haemon and Antigone. When Creon saw his son hurrying towards him, he was certain that he had heard of the judgment passed on Antigone, and had come to rebel against his father. But with feeble obedience, Haemon replied his wary questions, and only after he had convinced his father of his devotion did he venture to ask mercy for his beloved. "You do not know what the people are saying, father," he said. "You do not hear them demur because your imperious eyes keep them from saying to your face anything that is unwelcome to your ears. But I know what is going on, and I can tell you that the whole city is bewailing the fate of Antigone, that every citizen considers her action worthy of eternal glory, and that no one believes that a sister who refuses to let dogs gnaw on her brother's bones or birds hack at his flesh is deserving of death. And so, dear father, yield to the voice of the people. Do as the trees along the swollen forest stream. They bend to the force of waters and stand unharmed, but those who resist are uprooted by the current." "Does the boy propose to teach me?" Creon said contemptuously. "I see you are fighting on the side of a woman." "Yes, if you are a woman," the boy countered swiftly and eagerly, "for I said all I did only to help you." "I can see well," his father replied indignantly, "that blind love for an evildoer holds your spirit in bondage. But you shall not woo her alive, for this is my resolve. Far away, where no man passes, she shall be imprisoned in a rock grave, and only so much food will be given her as necessary to save the city from the taint outright murder might bring it. There she may plead for freedom with the gods of the underworld. She will learn too late that it is wiser to obey the living than the dead." And Creon turned from his son and ordered everything prepared to carry out his verdict. Publicly, before all the people of Thebes, Antigone was conducted to the tomb destined for her. Unafraid, and calling upon the immortals and her loved ones with whom she hoped to be reunited, she entered the cave which was to be her grave. In the meantime, the body of Polynices, falling into decay, still laid unburied, and the dogs and the birds fed on him, and fouled the city by carrying to this place and that the shreds of his rotting flesh. Then Tiresias, the aged soothsayer, who had once sought out King Oedipus, appeared before Creon, and from the smoke of sacrifice and the voices of birds prophesied disaster. He had heard the croak of evil, hungry throats, and the victim on the altar had charred in acrid smoke. "It is clear that the gods are angry with us," he ended. "Angry because of the treatment given the slain son of Oedipus. And so, O king, do not hold to your command. Yield to the dead and desist from murder. What glory is there in slaying the slain? Leave off, I say. I counsel you for your own good." But just as Oedipus once had done, so Creon now rejected the advice of the seer, accusing him of lies and greed for money. At that, the old man smoldered with rage and mercilessly snatched the veil from the future before the very eyes of the king. "Know then," he solemnly said, "that the sun will not set until you from your own blood give one body for two that are dead. You are committing a twofold crime by withholding from the underworld its due, and by keeping from the upper world the living who should dwell in the light of day. Quick, boy, lead me away from here. Let us give this man up to the fate in store for him." Leaning on his staff, he left at the hand of his guide. Creon's punishment. The king followed the sullen seer with his gaze, and he trembled. He called together the city elders and took counsel with them as to what was to be done. Release Antigone from her rock grave and bury the body of Polynices, they decided unanimously. It was not easy for Creon to bend his stubborn spirit to consent, but the heart had gone out of him. He agreed to do as Tiresias had said, since this seemed the only way to avert destruction from his house. First, he himself and the van of his retinue went to the field where Polynices lay, and then to the tomb in which Antigone was kept imprisoned. His wife, Eurydice, remained behind in the palace alone. Soon she heard the sound of lament rising from the streets, and as the clamor grew louder and louder, she left her chamber and went into the forecourt. There she found a messenger, the very man who had guided her husband to the spot where the mangled body of his nephew lay exposed. "We prayed to the gods of the underworld," he said. "When the dead body had been washed in the sacred bath, we buried those pitiful remains and heaped a burial mound out of clots of his native earth. Then we went to the stone vault the girl had entered to suffer the death of starvation. A servant who had gone before heard from afar cries of agony and grief coming from that terrible place. He hurried back to tell his king of the voice which issued from the tomb. But Creon already knew, though hearing it but dimly, that it was that of his son. He bade us run and peer through a crack in the stone, and what did we see? At the back of the cave hung Antigone, strangled in a noose she had knotted of her veil, and at her feet, clasping her knees, lay your son, Haemon, mourning his beloved, and cursing the father who had robbed him of his bride. And now Creon reached the rock grave and entered through the opening. Unhappy boy, he called to Haemon. What is your purpose? What does the madness of your gaze forebode? Come to me. On my knees I beseech you. But the son only stared at him, numb with despair. He gave no answer, all but snatched his two-edged sword from the scabbard. His father escaped the thrust by darting from the cave, and then Haemon leaned on the point and let it drive through his side. As he fell, he threw his arm around Antigone, drawing her close. And now, in their last embrace, they both lie dead in the tomb. Eurydice listened in silence. He had ended, but still she was speechless. Then she hastened from the room. When the king returned to the palace, accompanied by his servants, carrying his only son on a bier, he was told that Eurydice had stabbed herself with a sword and was lying within in a pool of her own blood. And here is where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back with more tales, many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.